Hey, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this. Um, Straight into it. Like I've been seeing a bunch of information out there. I've been going through all of the guides, all of that, just to min-max my character, my gameplay. And there's been always a few things missing from certain aspects of Retribution. So hey, I'm here making my own thing because I want you guys to see what I've learned. Talents, one of the major things. People will tell you that Crusading Strikes versus Templar Strikes is just whatever, play whatever you prefer, and it can be like that. It's not the gigantic difference, but Crusading Strikes seems to consistently be ahead of Templar Strikes. It's been showing simulations for me, Crusading Strikes being better, and for other people as well, and that seems to be the case in just single target and also AoE. I've been simulating a lot and doing a lot of stuff, and it always comes up ahead of Templar Strikes. So we're just going to be talking about that build. The other one does not matter for me. So for raid talents, there's two builds. There's pure single target, and then there's pure AoE. There's a lot of cleave bosses in Mythic, kind of. They don't warrant you taking anything other than single target, however. Just the occasional Divine Storm is more than enough. So I just include a pure single target build here, and then a pure AoE build for Assault of the Zakali, which is just a bad fight, by the way. It's very easy. M+, kind of the same thing. There's one default build that you pretty much always use. What changes is like 2 or 3 things. For Incorporeal, you want to be taking Turn Evil. That's really important. You just deal with the affix with one ability like that. You take out the avoidance, 2% avoidance talent in favor of Turn Evil there. And then the other most important situation I find to be Tyrannical Neltharian's Lair. Because of the damage profile there, it's mostly your top damage is going to be Final Verdict there instead of Divine Storm as usual. So I'm playing Divine Arbiter there instead of Searing Light. You just swap those two. And then there's also Devotion Aura that you may want to play in higher keys. In lower keys probably doesn't matter, just play the same thing. But then if you're doing like, I don't know, 24, 25 plus Halls of Infusion, for example, especially on Tyrannical, and you get to the Ice Boss, I don't remember the names, Devotion Aura is going to be really good for 2 reasons. That boss does so much damage, and some healers just straight up struggle a lot to heal that. And then your Retribution Aura also doesn't get procced on that boss because it's always instances of very low constant damage. It ends up being a lot of damage. So Devotion Aura is really good there. Rotation. This is Wahed does a very good job at telling you about your priority system and all of that. It's really, really good. It does get a couple of things wrong that are not major, but you know, everything adds up. You should follow Wahed for everything, but then consider these 2 things. Hammer of Wrath in single target, this is just for a single target, is the most important thing. Be it dungeon build or raid build, it's the same thing. It's going to be your highest damage dealer after Final Verdict, and thus you want to maximize your Hammer of Wrath over anything else. That's going to mean you want to maximize it over Execution Sentence in single target as well. I include also an opener that is correct, that I think this is to be the case. You're going to be starting with Blade of Justice, and then you straight up Wings instantly, and you spend all of your Hammer of Wrath charges. That's what you always will want to be doing. You don't want to go up to 1 Hammer of Wrath charge ever. You always want to be at 0, because Final Verdict can proc and recharge Hammer of Wrath, and you always want to be recharging instead of being capped. So do that. And then you also are in no real rush to spend Wake of Ashes or Divine Toll. You can take your time with doing that, because what's the most important thing? Generating Holy Power. And spending all Hammer of Wrath charges all the time will also contribute to generating more Holy Power. And yeah, just never learn rotation from simulations. Don't look into it too much. There is some wrong stuff. often. Don't learn rotation from there. Gear. You should be simulating everything all the time, and most of the time you're gonna be following whatever Raidbots tells you. But there's gonna be exceptions, and that can be difficult to tell what the exceptions actually are. But pretty much follow it all the time, and just ask people around whatever for maybe the exceptions, whatever. Now, because we're playing Crusading Strikes, haste seems to be the most important stat for pure damage output. Yeah, that's an important thing to mention. Haste comes ahead a bit, but all the three stats, haste, versatility, and crit, are quite close together in terms of damage output. Based on a lot of simulations, haste comes up ahead most of the time. So that's what you want. And then mastery, that's the one stat you pretty much don't want on your gear. If you can avoid mastery on your gear, you do avoid it. For raid, I go haste first and then versatility. And crit, I just have it on the gear. I accept crit gear, it's good too. But in keys, I go up to 30% versatility. Because the most important thing in keys this season is to just not die. The timer in keys seems to matter way less than previous seasons. If you survive the dungeon, you pretty much are almost guaranteed to time it. So when it comes to dungeons, I go up to 30% versatility, and I do that by having like high versatility ring equipped instead of high haste and crit, whatever. And once you do get to 30%, don't get any more because then you hit diminishing returns. You don't want to go past that because you want the most stats more than you want the most versatility. Unfortunately, we still have to play the goddamn Onyx Amulet in single target rate. It still deals a way more damage. For me, I think it's like 2,000 more DPS than a really good ring. So we're going to be playing that, unfortunately. But for dungeons, AoE, we play a higher item level ring. You don't play this thing. A little bit more about gear, trinkets. There are 3 BIS trinkets, and they are all from raid, as usual. The Elemental Pocket Anvil is the BIS trinket for pretty much any situation. It may be dungeons or raid. AoE or single target, just BIS. But then you have the choice between the Beacon to the Beyond, which is really, really good single target, and Natharin's Call to Chaos. They're kind of close, by the way, for single target, but Beacon is a bit better. It can be really good in situations like the last boss of Vortex Pinnacle, for example, like where you just want to kill one of the ads, the lightning orb things. You can just nuke it with the trinket. That can be good, but you probably played Natharin's Call to Chaos if you haven't. Now for dungeon trinkets, I hate the one that simulates the most damage, the Homeland Raid Horn. I don't use it. I refuse to use it. You have to aim it. You have to be like at the spot you want the thing to land, and then it also damages you, and it's just so bad. I think, especially in keys, you have to be inside the mob's hitbox. It's awful. I refuse to use it. But I do have a Mark of Dark Rule, which I use. It's really good. If you don't have either of those two, you should hunt for them. But the Irradius Fragment is also quite nice, especially for AoE. And you have the Frenzy Signal Flare as well, which is only good for single target, and then it's really bad for AoE. You should get the top 2 though. And don't craft any trinkets, by the way. Just don't craft them. Speaking of crafting, let's start with mentioning the Unstable Crossfire Belt versus the Shadow Flame Tempered Armor Patch. I've been seeing them doing exactly the same damage, so they're interchangeable, but and they're the best embellishment right now. But you should swim for yourself. They do the same thing, but with the Unstable Frostfire Belt, you cannot choose the stats for that item. You do want to craft a belt, and I don't advise you do the Frostfire belt. You should do a normal belt, which you can choose the stats for, and then use the Shadow Flame Tempered Armor Patch for that. And then It's just not locked with having mastery on your belt, because it's your worst stat. You don't want that. So what you should be crafting first, in my opinion, is pants. For mythic, this is for mythic raiders mostly. If you're not a mythic raider, you just always sim what you do with Droptomizer. For mythic raiders, I advise you craft pants first, because there are no 447 item level pants from raid. There's only, I think it's 444, so it's low item level, and pants is one of the most important pieces of gear. So I advise you do that first, and then I advise you do a belt second, because the 447 item level belt from the raid has mastery, which is your worst stat. And as third, even though a neck is probably more powerful than a belt, it would be your third craft. The high item level neck from raid has mastery, and that's not what you want. And you craft it after the belt, because you can get lucky with the vault and get a dungeon neck. They're quite good. So that's why I would recommend it third. And then a ring, because it's just a really good piece of gear, and there's also no high item level second ring. There's a 450 ring, but there's no 447 or whatever. So craft a ring fourth. And then you just simulate anything after that. A brief mention of consumables. Vial of Tepid Versatility versus Ice Vial of Corrupting Rage. If you don't know what you're doing, just always use the Versatility flask. However, the Corrupting Rage crit vial can be really good and more damage. It's straight up more damage than the other one, especially in AoE, because it just has a bunch more stats, and stats are the most important in AoE. That's why we don't use the Onyx Amulet in AoE. If you have to ask, just use the Versatility Flask. But if you know what you're doing, the Corrupting Rage vial can be way better. There are dungeons such as Underrot, for example, where there's not a lot of damage happening at all. So there you would be better off with crit. It's not really gonna proc, so it would be really good. But otherwise, if you don't know, just use the other one. It's really good as well. And if you are taking damage, Versatility is just makes you way tankier. Like you end up walking around with a freaking defensive stance all the time. It's insane. And then a brief mention of race as well. Dwarf is just better. It's just a better race, as well as Torrent for damage output. The crit damage multiplier is really important, because we're always critting with Hammer of Wrath, and we just have a bunch of critted. So it's just the better when it comes to damage, straight up. And then Dwarf is just better than Torrent if you're doing keys. As well, there's some situations in Mythic Raid with the Forgotten Elements, applying a Bleed, a Magic Dot. You can also dispel that if you are Dwarf. So Dwarf is pretty much the better race in the game. There's a lot of situations with Dwarfing keys where you can just remove major effects. So it's extremely powerful. I advise everyone to be Dwarf if they can. And keys in red. What are you supposed to be doing if you're red in keys? And what is it good? Yes, it's really good. Red damage is quite good for keys. In both AoE and single target. You cannot match some of the classes out there. Like, for example, Warlock, you cannot match their single target. It's absolutely preposterous and insane. And Shadow Priest is also going to be doing more overall damage than pretty much anyone. But you do offer a lot to a party. You are a really strong support. This season is very much about survival, as I've said, and Retribution can offer a lot of survivability to others, as well as itself being just straight up unkillable. Versatility class with 1 minute extremely powerful defensives. You are pretty much only going to be dying if you play wrong, and that's extremely good for this season. And then Blessing of Sacrifice is so potent for helping others survive as well, especially because of the way the meta is probably likely to be. I expect the meta to be Shadow Priest for sure is going to be always played every dungeon probably, and then because Shadow Priest is always going to be played, and there's very good PI classes such as Devastation Evoker, Warlock as well. You're probably going to be seeing two casters like that, I assume that's going to be the better composition. You can offer those squishier classes your externals, and that makes red really, really powerful like that. Yeah, you're a support class. You're there to help with the affixes, help the others survive, and you also fill up kind of a niche role in having very short damage cooldowns as well. Often the other classes will not want to be using their DPS cooldowns for 2 minutes, 3 minutes if you're balanced druid to finish packs off, but you can efficiently even use those to finish the pack and just make quite a bit of time for your group. So red is really good. Macros, I just list a bunch of macros here that I use. Usual mouse over macros, but also this one for Lay on Hands and Blessing of Protection, only being mouse over, so you don't accidentally use it on yourself. That can be really bad and lead to your death. And then this one for Execution Sentence or Final Reckoning in one button. It's especially good with, what's it called? Shared action bars. That's really good. And then you have a Mary Poppins Parasol macro, which is really important as well. You should use that. And then Slash Train, Divine Seed. Yep, that's it. Let me know if that was helpful. If I need to add something else, if I got something wrong, that's about it. Peace.